now with us and looking great, I might add, in his Irish Mickey Ward t-shirt. One of my dearest friends, former broadcast partner, former WEC light heavyweight champion, former UFC middleweight contender, decorated U.S. Marine Corps captain, probably father of the year too. The greatest living American, Brian Stann, is with us. Stann, can you hear me, buddy?
I can hear you loud and clear now, brother. How are you guys?
We're doing well, man. It's good to see you, all quarantined and everything. I think it's like day 32 for me. I mean, what has the last month been like for the busybody Brian Stann? My word.
I'll tell you, it's it's interesting having to transition an entire company to working remotely, that is customer facing, and then at the same time transition 3 girls to homeschooling and me trying to figure out how to try and accomplish both at the same time. It's been eventful and it's been really challenging. And I think the silver lining is I think it's caused a lot of people to find efficiency, strengths, and talents that they didn't know they had. But at the same time, it's been really challenging, right? Like a lot of businesses are getting hit hard. A lot of people are getting hit really hard and losing shifts and hours and wages. And I'm excited to just get through this and praying that my family continues to go unimpacted and be lucky.
I know you acted quickly for your company in terms of masks and protective equipment and obviously getting them out of the office. But I mean, are you starting to think right now about a possible return date, or are you just taking your cues from the government like everybody else?
You know, we're trying to do everything we can to forecast, and we're talking to economists from Europe, America, and everybody is trying to be amateur psychologists and wonder when decisions are going to be made. But at the end of the day, none of us really know. I think everybody is hopeful that at some point late May or June that people are going to start getting back to work. Fingers crossed. But you've just got to continue to balance that with what's best right now. And this is going to be one of those things where everybody's critical. We can Monday morning quarterback the heck out of this when it's all said and done with. What a difficult event to be a leader in government or any capacity to make decisions around this, because it's so hard to anticipate and know what the right call would have been.
Right. On a day-to-day basis, everything is changing. You got anything for us on the overall governmental response? I mean, it's easy, right, to sit at home on Skype and be critical, as you just said. But I certainly believe at the very least there was a little bit of a lack of rapidity to engage by our country in terms of the testing and some other stuff. But overall, I think, they've done some things well.
Yeah. I think we all would have liked to have seen our country logistically being more prepared with tests, mass protective equipment. I think part of the problem with some of those logistics is how dependent we are on where the virus came from. Right? So I had a second shipment of masks that were all stuck in a port in China that we couldn't get access to because the thought was they were contaminated. Which is really tricky. The one thing that I know, and, we all levy criticism or judgment, but one thing that I will say is you never know how many people you saved. You'll never be able to measure that. You have no idea how many people were saved in all of this because of the measures we've taken, because they didn't die. Had you not taken those measures, you'd have been able to quantify just how many lives were lost or impacted or people were sick. And so, me living in a home where, my 7-year-old mom lives. I've got a 6-year-old, right? If they were to catch this, what is that? What's the long-term impact? What could the risk be, right? Me having to say goodbye to my mother much earlier than anybody would have ever expected would be a eruption and massive disruption to my life, my children's life. And so we'll never know how many people were saved. Right. And that's one thing that I think everybody can hang their hat on. We took really drastic measures, and the hope there is that we saved a lot of people's lives and a lot of people from that type of devastation.
Brian, what kind of positive takeaways are you getting from this whole virus situation?
Some of them are, one, the ability for companies to work more remote. I mean, let's all face it, the ability to work from home and what that does for your work-life balance and just your overall happiness, right? We're all really focused on being productive and working really hard. But at the end of the day, life is about our family. And I often get frustrated sometimes where there are days where I work and, I only get several hours in the day to spend it with my children, who are the most important people in my life. right? But I spent the bulk of my day working all day. Working from home gives me the opportunity where I'm no longer commuting. In between calls, I can help them with their schoolwork. I can give them lunch. I can do different things. So I think that we're finding better ways and more efficient ways to do things in business now that hopefully can promote better work-life balance for our employees, more efficiencies with our companies that will actually help our economy rebound much faster and get our market back to where it was performing. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, all of us would like to retire and retire healthy. And when the market's doing as well as it's had over the last few years, that's a massive benefit for all of us. I know for the company I work in personally, a lot of the invested capital, the institutional capital that we utilize to grow our business, these are teachers' pension funds. These are firefighters, police officers' pension funds. So we want to be doing well. There's a bigger purpose there,
obviously doing what you do, and I know you're really busy with what's going on with your business. Have you been following the situation with the UFC, and how would you assess that whole situation?
I of course am following it. Like, that's been the hardest thing of all this, right? Like, that was my family for over a decade, and it's so you always watch it. And I went to fights just before really, everything got serious out in Las Vegas and had a blast. And obviously saw the classic that, was Joanna Jacek did the flyweight fight, which was just incredible. I've been following it. It's tough. And I think that, Dana has such a hard decision for him because he wants to get his people paid. And if he's able to put on fights, he doesn't have to reduce his workforce. He can bring in revenue. He can pay his fighters who are waiting. And as you know, guys see fighters' paychecks, but they don't factor in their taxes, right? Many fighters, right, that are just coming up are they're paycheck to paycheck at times, right?
And what they invest to their camps too. I mean, they're flying here, flying there, bringing in coaches and training partners. Yeah.
Super, exactly right, Kenny. It's hard. So him wanting to continue this and get them paid, right, while not bringing in massive crowds, if he can maintain that his workforce has been quarantined, I get it. I get what he's trying to do there. And then I also understand the decision by ESPN and Disney to tell him no, you can't, right? It's really difficult. There's a lot of responsibilities there. And so I'm excited. I think we all are excited to see sports get back into play. And I'm excited at some of the fights that are in the hopper for when this thing comes out. But I can see both perspectives. And we could sit there and we can criticize both ESPN for stopping it. We can criticize Dana for trying to move forward with it. But in the end, none of us really know what the outcome would have been. At the end of the day, right, there are certain people placed in positions of power to make those decisions. And I don't think you can criticize Dana for doing what he needed to do to keep his company moving forward and his people getting paid, right? Because it's certainly not for him. He's set for life. He doesn't care, right? He's fine no matter how this goes. But there are people put in power at Disney, right, that make those calls that, I thought he was very respectful when he had to respond in terms of how he did when it was canceled. Hey, look, I get it. I understand it. We're going to fight really hard when it's all said and done with to get these put on. So we'll all be judged in the aftermath of this. And the thing like I said before, I want to remind people of, it's you never know how many people you save with these measures. You can't quantify that.
Right. And perhaps ESPN and Disney were sort of waiting as long as they could before ultimately making that call to Dana White and respectfully asking him to stand down. Because as somebody who was preparing to fly to that show, whose spouse was not at all happy with that decision, I think a lot of us were kind of surprised that they didn't step in earlier, quite frankly.
Yeah. And that's the one area where, if you make decisions faster, you give people more planning and things of that nature, certainly. And, for you with young kids at home and anybody, work with the UFC, I mean, it's really, really difficult to make those decisions. And I understand that completely. It's very, and the other part about making decisions in this environment that's difficult is you can't always trust what comes out from the countries that were impacted before us, right? I mean, I'm not trying to be critical here, but at the end of the day, right, Chinese media is controlled by the government. So you don't know if everything you're receiving from them is accurate, and you're using them as precedents to make your current decisions. Is really, really tough, both as a business or in government officials. I mean, we in the state of Georgia, we had a governor who stood up and said, this disease is now airborne now, and it's now this type of contagious. We didn't know that until Monday. when that was known for 2 months. I mean, it was a huge gaffe that went on national media. I mean, some really major mistakes there. So, timing is certainly critical, and I'm glad that I think that the UFC employees who are not having to travel those events are seeing the silver lining and saying, hey, you know what? It's better to be cautious right now.
And the way Dana reassured us in private videos as a staff is something I'll never forget. Just how genuine those messages internally that were circulated were from him. So I want to get that out there as well. So quickly, because I know you've been a mentor to a lot of this roster, especially during your time as a commentator. You got 600 plus fighters on this roster. They all got different stories, children, financial needs. What is the mentality of the average man fighter out there? If you've still got a fight on the books in May here in 3 or 4 weeks, and the restrictions and limitations all remain the same.
Yeah, I would tell you, listen, I would tell them that this is a huge lesson to all of us on how to manage your money and having savings and having real liquidity. Experts would tell you should have 3 months of money saved up and always in a liquid fund like a money market account that you could fall back on. And as a fighter, especially, because we can get hurt at any time and we cannot fight for a year. Kenny dealt with major injuries during his career, and that's hard to do. So I would tell them that that's a lesson, and they should have a nest egg. The other piece is, listen, I trained for fights when I was in the military on a heavy bag, right, by myself. I didn't have training partners, and I know how complicated it is, but this is how we make money. And the fight game is about making as much money as you can for as long as you can. And to do it as long as you can, you want to take as little damage as possible. My career was shortened by all the damage I took in the gym, like a lot of fighters. And so this is actually an opportunity for them to arrive to a fight in great condition and extremely healthy. Will their timing be as good? No. Will their I would tell you that so much we fighters limit ourselves mentally thinking, if I don't do jiu-jitsu this many times a week, I'm not going to. Yes, you will. Don't put those mental limitations on yourself. Arrive to your fight healthy. Go compete the best you can so you can feed your family, save some money. You'll get back to resuming around normal training because everybody has those limitations right now. Nobody's getting a specific advantage over you. And I would recommend that they stay in the best shape they can so that they could fight as soon as they can. And they'll be able to fight really healthy without having taken any shots on the chin, which I would tell you is a major factor walking into an octagon.
Yeah, I figured you might be a good guy to ask that question to, because the circumstances for some of your training camps, even for high-profile fights, were less than ideal. So
yeah. I mean, look, I got a concussion a week before a fight. Forrest Griffin tells a story. Yeah, knocked out in the gym a week before fighting Anderson Silva. Rashad Evans knocked out in the gym a week before, or days before fighting Lyoto Machida. I mean, these things happen so often that there's some silver lining to this, and I think you're going to see some fighters that realize, boy, I don't need as much sparring or as much heavy wrestling on my body as I thought I did. I think fighters have gotten a lot smarter since I've retired, but, can only evolve more from this.
All right, I got a couple more minutes here with Brian Stann, and then we got some rapid fire questions, as always, for you on the way out. So you mentioned you were in Vegas last month for UFC 248. Obviously, a group of us were thankful to have dinner with you and break bread and catch up a little bit. But you mentioned the fight between Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and maybe the best fight that I've ever called. So I got to ask you, that was the appetizer. The entree was Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero. You're there with your girlfriend. Like, what's going through your mind as that 25-minute affair played out?
You know me, right? I've got Javier Mendez sitting in front of me. I've got fans around, all super mad, and then I've got her who's still kind of new to the sport, and I'm trying to explain to her what's taking place right now. I said, on one hand, you have a fighter who's had conditioning problems before and is fighting cautiously because it's a 5-round fight, and many fighters are very afraid of getting exhausted and gassing in that octagon. There's nothing worse than it, right? On the other hand, you've got Israel, who's one of my favorite fighters to watch, got hit with an early punch in that fight and probably said to himself, okay, at the end of the day, he has a very small window at the height of his pay scale as a champion, right? And fans in a sport that has a very short memory, why risk getting knocked out, right, to get less boos from a crowd when you are comfortably winning a fight at range and not taking any damage that could decrease that window of you being at the top of your pay scale? Because you know what? 10 years from now, who's paying Israel's medical bills? What fans are coming up to him for autographs, right? Nobody's doing. Kenny, has anybody offered to pay medical bills recently?
No.
No, it's an entertainment sport, and you're not going to be forgiven long term if that's how you fight. Right. But I can understand his thought process there. Look, you want my belt, I'm winning the fight. Come close some distance. I thought it would be stupid of Israel if he started closing the distance just to satisfy fans in that fight and risk getting knocked out by a guy who was clearly losing. And I think that Yoel, challenging for him, covering, closing the gap with range was always the most challenging thing for me because I'm built like a T-Rex. It's hard, right? And Yoel probably doesn't want to walk into a punch and get knocked out in a fight where he thought his sporadic explosions may be winning him the fight. Yeah. And you can't, he needs corners that are going to tell him, listen, Yoel, you're taking too many chances. You are not winning this fight right now.
Hey, when we brought you on, we were talking about Dominick Cruz and the potential that he gets a title fight in early May, despite having not competed since 2016, which is absolutely incredible. Now, he was offered the title fight. I don't know if Ali Abdelaziz and Henry Cejudo, that side of things, would dispute it, but Dominic came out and said it. I can say on good authority that he was offered that fight. I don't know if Jose Aldo is going to be able to make it back into the country. Piotr Jan is lurking. There are others, but can you believe that shit? I mean, with Dom, it's title eliminator or title shot, and might be getting the goddamn title shot.
I love this fight. I honestly, God, I want him to get it. I want to watch that fight so bad. Yeah. I have never met someone with the mentality of Dominick Cruz. He's almost so stubborn that he won't lose because of it. Like he won't allow himself to get fatigued. I mean, and I don't mean, but I mean, the way his mind works, Henry Cejudo better not take that fight lightly at all. At all. Because I'm telling you, Dominic is mentally as strong as they come. And he will come in there and he will be very disciplined in his game plan.
Yeah.
He will be ready. And that is not a guy that you want to get into a chess match. You better be able to physically overwhelm him for 5 rounds. Because if you get into a chess match, boy, oh boy, it could be a long night for you.
Yeah. And Dominic is significantly bigger, by the way. I mean, that you should see them next to each other. All right, rapid fire questions on the way out with the greatest living American, Brian Stann. All right, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best possible score. How well have your kids behaved during the quarantine?
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna give them a 9. I'm serious. They've adjusted. They've been phenomenal. I've been on the phone a lot during the day. They've gone outside and played. They've honestly, they've really risen to the occasion, and they've been really understanding of different canceled trips. They were supposed to go with their mother to see their family for spring break, which is really heartbreaking for them not to get to do it. So they've been great.
Yeah. All right. That's good. That's good to hear. Best part of social distancing overall for you has been what?
Best part of social distancing,
you hate your neighbors, right? No, I mean,
I think, gosh, I don't get out. The best part of it, I think, is I've been home more and got to spend even more quality time with my kids. I mean, playing kickball with them in the backyard, and that's really been the silver lining there, is even more time with my kids, just doing really fun, interactive stuff, and getting more involved in their schoolwork even more than I ever was before. Is really cool because with the teacher not there, I'm explaining different things about history and having further conversations. That's been really cool.
Yeah, much better man than I'm. The academic stuff just gives me anxiety. Even the 3rd grade stuff. Because it's reading comprehension for me. It's like I'm trying to help my daughter with a story, but I haven't been paying attention when we're reading about tortoises. All right, Brian Stann, you fought 11 times in the UFC. Do you know how many on-the-record post-fight bonuses you received in those 11 fights?
1, 2, 3.
5, bro. Ready? Knockout of the night, Jared Heyman. Fight of the night against Mike Macenzio. Fight of the night against George Santiago. Fight of the night against Michael Bisping. And fight of the night against Vanderlei Silva. That's 5.
5. Yeah. Wow. Damn. That's awesome. I like that. Come on now. I got to remember that.
That's my research. All right. But I just, see, Joe, I can't wait to tell Joe Silva the next time I talk to him. Hey, you gave Stann 5 bonuses, by the way. So.
And I'll tell you, one of them was really close. There was when I fought George Santiago, Demetrius Johnson had a heck.
Yeah. All right. Fact or fiction, by this date in 2021, Francis Ngannou will be the UFC heavyweight champion.
Wow, 2021.
He's got a year to do it, right? I would have said by the end of 2020, but
will have been or will be.
No, will be. I'm saying he's got a year to be the belt holder.
With fact on that.
Okay. Yeah. I think he'll be favored to beat every heavyweight in the world right now. Best television show or movie that you have seen since being quarantined? Anything jump off the film for you, kid?
You know what? I recently got into Ozark, and I find that to be just a really, really cool show.
Great show.
I'm not a big show guy, but we just got into it. I'm 5 episodes in. I think it's phenomenal.
I gotta check it out.
Well, it's good to see your face, my man, and I wish you all the best. And we look forward to catching up with you over the course of the year as we get back to some normal things like UFC fights and all that. But always gracious, always good to hear you, buddy. I hope you have a great rest of the quarantine for as long as it goes on.
Amen. Thank you guys so much. I miss you guys, and thanks so much for having me.
There he is, Brian Stann,
great shirt.
UFC legend, repping Irish Mickey Ward today here on the Anik and Florian podcast.